the leader and the act of leading, and the process of leadership. Listen to how I say it. The leader and the act of leading and the process of leadership. Because various scholars explain that differently. They explain leadership as a relationship between a leader and a follower, leader and followers, or a group of leaders exercising the act of leading. So we're going to look at different aspects of leadership that are very important. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to start by making a quotation, and so that people understand and some things about leadership. So there's a lot for you to write, and I will take my time, and I will be sticking to my notes entirely, and I want you to follow me. Some of the things, when you hear them, they may sound like they may be a little bit above your head, but that's not the intention. But with the more they're explained, you're gonna follow the beauty of how they apply to each of us individually in our lives. So let's shoot. Zelenik, a writer, says something about leadership. He says, leadership is based on a compact that binds those who lead and those who follow into the same moral, intellectual, and emotional commitment. That's what Zelenik says. He says leadership is based on a compact. That word compact is the same word as an agreement or a covenant. Okay. That binds those who lead and those who follow. So there must be followers, there must be a leader for leadership to be constituted. He says it binds both of them. Okay. The word bind is a much more less forgiving word, and the word bind, it moves away from a loose arrangement. So leadership is not something that is loose, that gives people the right to come in and out as they wish. That word bind is a little bit stronger word that talks about something that pulls us together. It binds. So the thinking is that unless there's a compact that binds people, you can't really exercise leadership as you should. This introduces to a thought that some of us who talk about leadership, we need to avoid by expecting top leadership if those that are leading the fans, not committed people. Fans come and go, but committed people are here to stay. So it's very critical for us to establish that base, to understand that being committed to a cause, to the work of God, is the basis upon which the leadership class is based. Let me re-give the definition quite a lot, because I'm going to be giving you quite a lot of information. I want you to write down, I want you to think, and I want you to apply your mind. Okay? He says leadership is based on a compact that binds those who lead and those who follow into the same moral, intellectual, and emotional commitment. So therefore, we can say leadership is multi-sectoral, or we call it in academics, we call it is multi-level. Yeah, and it deals with emotional, it deals with moral, it deals with intellectual, it deals with moral, it deals with spiritual at different levels. Intellectual because it recognizes that as a leader I must provide intellectual stimulation, which means as a leader I must make you think harder and think better, and think that's meant intellectual stimulation. But also it provides moral basis. So when people come to church, they may not be knowing what morals are all about. What are morals? What good behavior is all about. And therefore good leadership, if it's in-house, it points a direction for people to improve their moral apprehension. which means under a good leadership, people behave morally better. They come to church and they behave, in ways that are unwelcome. But if there's good leadership, we need to help them morally to behave morally. And emotionally, it ties them to the same. That word same, which means it's something that we share. And that's very important. It's easy to lead people as a leader and not share what the Bible says about faith and not share what the Bible says about what's morally correct. It's easy to lead people and not to share what is morally correct, what is morally right. It's important that we share. Wrong is wrong for you and for I. The same standard. Faith is faith for you and I. Prayer is prayer for you and I. Same. It binds us together. It's not something you can get out of. It's something that you willfully, with your eyes wide open, understand what you must do, what should be done, and what should not be done. Into the same moral commitment. So this is just an introduction about leadership. So as I pursue leadership, understand that what I'm trying to achieve, part of what we need to explain is how a leader, what strategies, what ways do we do to get to the same? Because that's a hard one. You can have a congregation of people who believe one thing about something, and now you believe as a leader something else. So you must you must come to the same. Well, why is it important for you to have the same? Let me read it again, and it's going to give you that definition. I'm taking it slowly. And we're going to get into 10 other points about leadership. It says leadership is based on a compact or a compact, an agreement that binds those who lead and those who are led into the same moral, intellectual, emotional commitment. So therefore, when it says the same intellectual, I said it earlier, it means we're not leading zombies, right? We're not leading people who can't think, who are just yes boys and yes girls. You improve their intellectual understanding. You improve the ability to think through what you are doing and that which they have landed themselves into. You might provide a top-level thinking, but because you have intellectually stimulated who they are, they then provide the rest of the operational thinking. But it's all intellectually, which means ability to think and ability to know what needs to be done. The reason why the word the same is very important is because it's very profitable for leadership for us to do things with people who share your beliefs and share your concerns and share your vision. If you have the same people who believe the same thing. It's easy to lead people who share the same thing. Now the question is, how do you get as a pastor, as a leader, at any given point in time, a head of a department, and you're working with people, how to get them to a point where you all believe the same thing, where all you share the same common goal? I'm going to address some of the thoughts in the inside of the teaching, but that's where now you come to the capabilities and the competences of the leader to be patient and to be able to bring people to the same thing. Part of it, the key part of it, within the Christian environment, is make sure you pray to communicate that people through the Holy Ghost, they may understand what you're trying to achieve. They may follow exactly what you're doing. It's very important, because then what is not being said by this quotation, what is implied is that it's easy as a congregation, as a leader, to be in a group of people you lead with multiple versions of thoughts around what you're doing. Everybody thinking what they want to think about what you do. Others that think he's trying to show us how smart he is. Or people are thinking he's playing while I'm in time. Some are saying he's serious. Some are saying he's teaching us. Some are saying, you see, there's various thoughts that reside in the same group, and none of them is accurate. So through communication, when a leader communicates, when a leader says what needs to be said, we reduce what we call inaccuracies of understanding. Now that's a very important phrase in a very important stage in leadership to reduce inaccuracies so that you don't have people believing what they want to believe and thinking the other thing, that through communication, through saying it, through repetitive action, you come to a place where you get people to understand what you're trying to do. Beyond that point, if that foundation is not laid, therefore, leadership is just someone speaking good words, not moving the sameness forward. You're not moving the sameness. You're not moving you and the team. Remember, now you're believing the same thing. Now you're believing the same thing about morals, believing the same thing intellectually, believing the same thing about faith, believing the same thing. So the next time when you speak, if there's sameness that resides in the house, you're moving the sameness forward, which means there's growth in the leadership relationship. If there's no sameness, you are just speaking nice words. You're in trouble. You're wasting your time. Okay? So the key question then for us, all of us, is that how do we get to a point then? How do we get to a point where we all are together, we believe the same thing, and how do that as a leader in the past, some of the time, and that is why it takes longer for some leaders, it takes longer for churches, it takes longer for ministries and to achieve one thing they've been talking about for the longest of time, because it means different things to different people. There's no one who's committed to the communication strategy to strategize and to communicate the same thing, the same way, the same time to the same people. That's what I do. And that's why on some key things that the church does, I say them myself. I communicate the same thing to the same people all the time. I say it the same way. I communicate. I don't change it. I'm not backing down. Okay? Now, so that is leadership. That's just the basis of leadership. Now, let's look at different facets of leadership now that we've spoken. Number one, when I talk about leadership as, number one, let's talk about leadership as mobilization. Number one, I want to talk about leadership as the act of mobilization. Okay? Very important. Okay. Let's talk about leadership as mobilization. Okay. Now, let me give you the quotation. Hives and Snyder says something very important about leadership. They say, leadership is mobilizing the group's resources to face, define, and resolve its problems. I'm going to do it again. So leadership is mobilization. I'll explain it to you. Don't worry about it. Just take the point down. We're not speaking around it. Leadership is mobilizing the group's resources. The group, which means now you understand there's a leader and followers, right? You mobilize their resources to face, define, and resolve its problem. Okay? Now the word mobilize is to bring into action. In other words, is to persuade people to take a step. The way to mobilize is to get a loosely arranged group of people to be a united force, believing the same thing and going in the right direction. Is to mobilize. Within the political arena, every time when the political head office, whether any political party, I don't want to mention political parties on my pulpit, but any political party, when it sets a direction, they say it's time for us to have a rally at a stadium. Okay, they want to have a rally, a political rally at a stadium. If that decision comes from the NEC or the National Executive Committee or the PEC or the REC, whatever executive structure there is, if they set a decision, they decide this is what we do, then they leave it to the branches to mobilize people, to get the people to do what is decided. They push the people. They speak a language that persuades the people to say, we all going, we all going, we all going. They bring hashtag going there next week. They bring reminders. That's mobilization strategy. You mobilize. So mobilization is the same as act of leadership, but it has a specific time period because it's pointing to a particular action that needs to be taken. That's mobilization. So modern day, if you have a PR, some organizations have got PR, they mobilize. Like, for example, all retail companies, whether be it banks, whether be it Absas, and be it Pick and Pays, or those that sell game, and all of the, excuse the names of companies in my speech. You shouldn't promote companies that people think we are aligned, but I'm using that as an example. All retail, they have what we call campaigns. For example, they said during the year, some of the campaigns may be seasonal, connected to a particular season. They might be saying, okay, this is winter season, this seasonal. Everybody's going to need a jacket. Everybody's going to need a warm sweater. Everybody's going to need boots. Everybody's going to need a tracksuit. It's warm. So therefore, at the point of need, right at the beginning of April towards May, they then make what you need cheaper. Okay, they make, it's a campaign. They call it a campaign, but actually the campaign mobilizes. They don't call it mobilization because they don't want to be trapped in language of politics. They want to be on the side of economic language. They feel better to use the word a campaign than to, they might use the word campaign, maybe not, that lends into a political sphere as well, campaigning and mobilization. They might call it mobilization strategy at some level, but they might talk about the sale. But it includes mobilization. They mobilize, which means they send papers out and they talk to people who are on internet and who are running television. They ask for space to herald their message, to beam their message louder. For you, when you're watching Generations, their message comes in, come. The sweater, the jacket, the jersey was supposed to be $79.99. We're selling $49.99. It's only the special is only applicable from 1 April to 27 April because they know they need to effect a month end for people to have the money. Beyond that, it goes back to normal price. They're mobilizing. They send the message, they're mobilizing strategy. So leaders need to know how to mobilize. You can't say you're a leader and you're quiet. No, you're not a leader. Leaders know how to get into people's skins, into people's mind, and get people to only think about you. That's mobilization. Leadership is mobilization. I find that we as churches, we are bad on mobilization. We think everything we do is going to work around the same way. It's going to work through an announcement. And we don't have mobilization strategy for a particular thing that we do. Like yesterday, I introduced a concept to something. I said, over Easter, we're going to go to a big piece of land. I mobilized the people. And I said, tell me in your mind what do you want to see. Write down, bring the paper. That was mobilization. From that, the mobilization strategy is not stopped yet. I'm going to read all the papers. I'm going to send back a paper to the church to say, this is what you told me, it's what you wrote. Are you still sure? And people write again. So the mobilization goes on. And if now you're sure, what do you think it costs? Because a mobilize, it's a specific period. It's between now and next year, April, next year, Easter. We're going to need a lot of millions to do it. I'm mobilizing the congregation. There are times when a leader, you can't just sit down and think, I'm Mr. Smart, I'm wearing a nice bow tie, I'm not going to talk too much, what are they going to think about me? No, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You're not going to lose, you're going to lose big time. Leadership is mobilization. For what? Okay? The word mobilize. For what? You must know how to mobilize. Okay? Leadership is mobilizing the group's resources to face, define, and resolve its problem. Number one, you mobilize for them to face the problem, to face it. No matter how big the problem, you help them to face it. Like for example, I was putting up a project yesterday worth millions. How am I helping mobilizing the congregation to face it? Is that I'm telling you, you've done it before. Look at the buildings, the land you've bought, the things you've done. This is just the next project. It's just the next natural. You're mobilizing them to face. What does that mean? Let's bring it to personal level. Most of the time when you're a leader, you're going to have to mobilize people to face the situations in their lives for you. Solution does not come from things we run away from. Solution comes from things we face to deal with. You're going to face it. Face your lack. Face the fact that your marriage is not working. Face the fact that you are losing the battle yourself. If you're left by yourself when you're alone, you do too much wrong. You've got to face that. It's a moment of reality. When we help people to face, we remove denialism. Other people want to deny the obvious. Oh, minang right now, wuko sharp. Look at what do. You've been left out for 5 years, but what we've done in 5 years, they've messed up. You've lost that, they've done that, they've done that. You need someone to monitor you. You need to be accountable to someone. You need to face it. So I need to mobilize your resources. It says you mobilize your resources. I need to mobilize what's on the inside and say, okay, you've been taught discipline, this is how we use it. This is how you use the discipline you've been taught. Okay, but your kuliso is not helping you in this time. Let's mobilize it. Let's bring it out, clean it up, reinforce it, strengthen it so that it helps you through this time. As leadership, sometimes you're not bringing something new. You are rearranging what exists so that it leads people to the right direction. Sometimes you're not bringing something new. You're just helping people to rearrange what they have. Just say, but you've got the ingredients that are necessary for you to, to be successful. Let's rearrange these ingredients in your life and make sure that you could be successful and make sure you do it. Most of the time when people ask for my advice on leadership, and sometimes I don't bring in new thinking. There were times when you got to do a skills analysis and you've got to check. You've got to do a skills audit. You've got to audit who they are and how they think and what they do. You've got to do that. But most of the time, you've got to rearrange what they have and say, you've got that. If you're to combine A, B, C, D, E, it would work for you. It's just that you've been jumping steps. There's a couple of steps you've got to go back. You've got to now making sure that you do this, you look after this, you take care of that, and you do that. And sometimes people need to do that. What are you doing? You are mobilizing. You are reviving. You are pushing forward what they have, what they need to do, how they need to do it, and how they need to get to where they need to get to. They may be having big visions, but little pull. They may be wanting big goals, but they've got very little effort. How do you bump up their effort? How to push up their effort? How to make sure? Then it's an energy problem. It's a motivation problem. It's not a skills problem. Okay, they have the skills, but they don't have the motivation. Okay, if they have a motivation problem, how do you do that? Then you bring in scriptures to them, like verses that say, David encouraged himself in the Lord. They need to learn how to motivate themselves. They need to come into environment. Some of the time, if they're in a motivation, come into a church, come into environment, a house like this, stay there, be a member for 6 months, and don't do anything. Bring back the motivation. And once the motivation is there, and write this down. Motivation produces momentum. Write it down. Motivation produces momentum. Okay. And momentum produces a get ahead, progress, and success. There will always be people who have a motivation problem. I'm going to talk about that. Oh, my time. Okay. There will always be people who have a motivation problem. They've got dreams, they've made the decision, they've done the New Year's resolutions, but they don't have the motivation. They don't have the bump up, the energy, the push, the passion. They've come down to a moment where through input and Holy Spirit input upon their lives, and the Holy Spirit has brought you to understand that certain things are critical. You need to do certain things, and you've noticed, and through the reflecting, and the Holy Spirit has made you aware that you need certain things, but you lack the energy to act on it. It lies there unattended for years. 10 years later, you've got to dust up the dream. His dream is still there, but the energy is not there. Undone. Write it down. A failure to master the levels of motivations required for each dream. The failure to master the motivations required for each dream, or for each goal of the dream. Maybe let me be leadership. Let's say for each goal of the dream, will leave you with intentions and no actions. Will leave you with intentions and no actions. You can tweet on that. The failure to master. Now the word master there, I'm using it in two ways. Let's break down. Now we're talking leadership, right? So I need to teach you the leadership language. That word master, I'm using it in two ways in English. I'm using it as M-U-S-T-E-R, and I'm using it as M-A-S-T-E-R. M-U-S-T-R means to gather. M-A-S-T-R means to overcome and to rule. So if you don't rule motivation, if you don't bring together motivation, you can't manage yourself to bring yourself to a place. You can't master yourself, self-mastery. You'll remain with intentions with no goals. Dreams will lie around unattended. You will be known for writing things down and never put them into actions. You will be known for thinking them up and not acting them up. You will be known for commit them to paper and not funding them. You will be known for dreaming about them and not knocking on doors to get them done. Right? Yeah, no motivation. So leadership is to help people to mobilize. It's very critical. So when I'm sitting and I'm on the pulpit on Sunday, when I preach, I'm mobilizing the motivation required in your life. I'm giving you a gentle push. Go get it. Go do it. Go get it. Go do it. You can do it. You can do it. Go get it. Go do it. You can do it. You can change. Go get it. Go do it. Go get it. Yeah. Pastor facing obstacles. So what? So what? Obstacles. Go get it. Go do it. Go get it. Go do it. Jesus, when they're facing obstacles in Mark chapter 4, verse 35, with his disciples, they facing obstacles, and the windstorm beat upon the boat. He didn't say, let's turn back. He said, I'm going to fight the opposition. I'm going to get to the other side. Which means my initial commitment will be challenged halfway, but I'm not going to turn back on my initial commitment. I need to develop the skills to push back on that which is stopping me from achieving my goals. You need to know how to fight. So mobilizing is teaching people how to fight. To face, number one. Facing problems is an act of leadership. There are a lot of people who like to deny what is going on in their lives. There are a lot of people who like to deny. Helping people to face things is a big act of leadership. To face that we have a problem, we have a challenge. And what's the subset? What is not being said by the statement is that everybody thinks highly of themselves, even in situations where they shouldn't be. They shouldn't. There's not something wrong to think highly of yourself, but there's something wrong to think highly of yourself where you know you're failing and think you are succeeding. Because that shows that your mind is not working right. You're not thinking correctly about your life. You need to face some things. And that's why the Bible says, no, don't think of yourself. Romans 12 verse 3, Paul says, don't think of yourself more highly, no more than you ought to think. Everybody wants to think himself, I can do it. I can do it. You can do it, yeah. Even some of us who have a wider bodies, I like to think I'm slim. Who has that problem? Am I the only one? Yeah, there's many. They're right there. Look, there's many. We like to think ourselves as we... Come on, raise your hand. We like to think ourselves like we're slimish. But you're not slim. Face up to it. Yeah, I'm just using myself as an example. In life, the reason why our interventions, which means what is an intervention? A means of professional help, which means that we bring, as a preacher that I bring, maybe psychologists they bring, and everybody else. The reason why interventions fail is because people refuse to accept the medication that they are given because they think they're not sick. I'm not that sick, doctor. I'm not that bad. And there's a tendency sometimes to deny, professional help. And people don't want to face things. They want to face the fact that, I'm not bad. Oh, I'm not bad. No, it's him. Okay, so you have a relationship. Oh, you broke up in the relationship. Yeah. What happened? It's him. But what did you do? I told him off. Okay, the previous relationship, what did it break? Oh, it was him again. But what did you do? I told him off. So everybody that leaves, 4 of the guys have left your life because of what you say, but it's their problems, right? It's because these men are bad. Okay, it's their problems. But you don't want to turn the spotlight on you and face up that maybe it's my speaking. So facing things up is the first act of knowing how to solve a problem. You don't solve a problem that does not exist. And you'll find that many people will run away from facing a problem and admitting to themselves, in admitting in a professional setup, in a session, they have problems because they like to, it's a narcotic for them. It's like a drug for them to think I'm good, while actually the facts in your life prove that there's some things that are not going right in your life. They're unreal. If you're in psychology, they would call it a dysfunction. It's some form of dysfunction. To be a denial is to deny certain things exist in your life. So part of leadership is to mobilize the group's resources, to face, to define. So not only you face it, now you define it, which means you give it a name. So not only face the problem that you have, you give it a name. Okay? So if you come to me, I've got my own problems, and I give them a name. In leadership, I've got my own problems. So patience is not my problem. I'm very patient as a leader. Okay? So if you don't do what I say, my problem is that I get upset. And I define it. So while I define my being upset, I get upset, I become unhappy, but for 1 second, I define it. I get upset for 1 second and I let it go. I just let it go and I get into the solution mode and I solve it with you and I support you. But one moment, I get upset. I do get upset. I'm defining it now. I'm giving it a name. You must come to a place in your life where you give a name to your behaviors. Define it. I'm like this, I don't forgive, and it takes me 15 years to forgive one statement that you make. Define it. I'm not that easy. Other people that tell, I don't easily forgive. It takes me 15 years to forgive you. So if you did 5 things, I need 5 lifetimes. It was 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. How many times am I going to get 75 lives for all the people? You need 15 lifetimes to forgive only 5 people. Because one, it takes 75 years to forgive one. And you have been wronged by 5 people. You have been wronged by 100 people. You need 5 times. Define it, who you are. It's in the definition where you get to know the size of help you need. It's in the definition that you understand the size of help you need. Until your problem is defined, it's just a challenge, it's not a problem. But I'm facing difficult times. But the difficult times, you're creating the difficult times. Until you define it, you know that I'm the creator of the difficult times. I'm the one who's behind it. And which lends me into one of my most favorite statements in life is that you take yourself everywhere you go. You go with you. So when there's a mess, always check up with yourself. What is my contribution to the problem? How did I contribute for everything that has gone bad and got worse and did not come right? So as a leader, you mobilize to face and to define, to give it a name. Part of the strategies that you knew at that defining problem, so when you take an organization, maybe a company where you've got executives that are fighting, and you are a leader, you're taking them through a workshop, and you're workshopping all of these leaders who are fighting their CEOs, and CEOs is very unhappy, wants to fire 3 of his executives, and there's a very emotional session, and you mobilize their resources as a session. Remember, you come in as neutral, you come into the environment as neutral, you mobilize to face their resources. You bring them into the room and you say, let's talk about what you think is a problem. And of course, you must understand, you must be grown in your mind when you facilitate, when you intervene in situations like that. It does not always mean that the first one to speak is the right one. Most of the time, the wrong one to speak is the first one. The one that is wrong the most is the first one to speak, because they want to defend their actions. They want to bring what they use on the corridors into your intervention session. They can put it in the bedroom, in the boardrooms. They can have not in my intervention session. And therefore, the first one says, no. They don't listen, and they don't act, and they don't comment on my reports on time, and they're very slow, and they're not supportive. The first one, is that the problem? Okay, we write it down. That's a problem. And another one says, no. It's not that we're not supportive. It's just that law we are telela. And it becomes very emotional to take a group of management of people who all are learned, all they have degrees, all they're earning high salaries, all of them are driving big Mercedes, all of them have got big houses, they are paid big salaries, over 200,000 rand a month. They are top leaders of the company, their egos are big. All of them, they've got 1,000 people underneath them they're managing. They know themselves, I'm Mr. So-and-so. Their suits are 40,000 rand and their perfumes are 10,000 rand. They are big egos. And you bring them into the room. It's a very sensitive thing to help them to face and to name their problem. You bring them to tears. But once you come through that moment, come through that phase of helping them to name it, then you can begin to say, how much of this problem is due to your incompetence or your behavior? And you pin them down. Some would say, maybe someone would say all of it. Another one would say 80% is me. Some would say 40% is me. And you say, if there's problem, so we say, let's stop right here. If the problem, you acknowledge the problem is you, the problem that we have in the company is you, then let me prescribe help for each of you. We're going to meet in 2 months. I'm going to make sure I give you a coach and a psychologist to help you through your anger, your bitterness, your competition. You compete a lot. After 2 months, we're going to come and sit here and see the fresh air you bring to map the way forward. Because it says here, leadership is a mobilized group resources to face, define, and resolve these problems. Remember, we're not raising these things for nothing. We want to resolve the problem. When the problem resolved, it's the same as marriage. When people have hurt each other, you must take them to the point when you must not be sidetracked by the fact that they're blaming each other. Not only he has done this to me, she has done this to me. Write it down. You're helping them to face it. You're mobilizing their resources. And then after all, it says, let's define it. Let's define what the problem is. Let's give it a name. Then they give it a name and says, what's your contribution to the thing? And they find out there's no one as innocent. We both have messed it up. As though they come out through that painful stage where their angers are low, where there's internal reflection, where there's proper thinking that are, as a matter of fact, they're right. I'm the cause of all of this. And then they start to map out the way to resolve the problem. Until you get there, if we can't help you to reach your solutions, then there's no leadership. You get it? Let me give another one. So leadership is mobilization. Okay. Let's give another one. And leadership is motivation and morality. Number 2, leadership is motivation and morality. I've spoken a bit about motivation, but it's important for us to give you a thought that is very important. It's motivation and morality. Motivation and morality. I'm sorry. Can I jump that one because I've already given you that? Because I've got 11 ones. Then motivation, I've spoken about that. Okay, and then leadership. Leadership is social vision and change. Social vision and change. Let me talk about that. Leadership is social vision and change. When I say social, I mean it can affect other people. Now, I'm going to explain to you the context of what I'm trying to say. Let me give you a definition. Social vision and change. Okay? One writer says, Forster, as a matter of fact, says something very important about leadership. Says, leadership is and must be socially critical. It does not reside in an individual, but in the relationship between individuals. And it is orientated towards social vision, change, not simply or only organizational goals. Social vision and change. Okay? Now, social vision in leadership is that anything that is social that brings society into it. And I'm going to, remember I told you that I'm going to be married to biblical forms of leadership, but I'm also going to bring in what I call secular forms of leadership for people to get and improve your leadership skills within your company, within where you are in your space, what you do, and everything else within church and everything like that. It says it's social vision and change. Let's talk about the change part. It talks about something that must be changed in a social environment. All right? The problems you're going to face when you talk about social change, social vision and social change. When you're planning your future on a success with people who don't share your values, who don't share your vision, you are lying to yourself. When you're planning your future on success with people who don't share your vision, who don't share your goals, who don't appreciate the origin of the vision, you're lying to yourself. Now, I'm coming into society now. What is society or social? Friends, a group of people in a society, a club, and what is another social? A WhatsApp group, a social. WhatsApp group, a collection of friends. Maybe you went to school together. It's a group of reunion. Social may mean you have an NGO, or maybe you are tasked, you have a business of getting into society and finding people who don't know financial literacy, and you've got to do business, and it's a social change. Everything that wants to do social change, you find about Gogo and senior citizens who need to be looked after, and you have senior citizens. You've got street kids you want to help. Anything that is social, and you have a social vision, which means social vision. I'm going to take this group of people from A to B, because that's what vision does. But this is social vision now. Why do I call it social vision? Because I'm not talking about sacred vision within a church. Sometimes it's vision within a church, pastor, and because there's a different rules around that. A pastor and a leader, that God and Moses, they did things differently. Let me explain just a social vision, because I'm just expanding my scope of leadership. Let's say you have a social vision. You want to take a group of people from A to B. You want to make sure that you take a group of homeless people. You want to make sure that you clean them up, take them back home, and believe them, and help them to get their own homes. You have a social vision, and you write it out big, and you say, "This is my social vision." At the core of that social vision, there should be a change, right? Because there should be a change. Now, that word change is explained in its sense of both institutional change and mental attitude change. So, if you take people who are homeless, who live on the streets, and you change the situation, you give them brand new homes, what are you going to find out? What's going to happen? They might sell all the furniture because you have not changed their drug habit. So you have changed where they live. You have changed an address. I'm just making an example. I want to show you what I'm talking about. You would have changed their address. You've taken them from the streets. You put them into a new home. Have you brought change into their lives? Effectively, yes, you have brought a change. But the change that you have brought is not sufficient. Because once they get into the new home, if you do not, and you think just by being in your home, they're going to appreciate their own homes. No. And if you don't change their drug habit, they will sell everything in that new home. So then what does change mean? You see, it needs qualification. Can you see that? We need to qualify the change. We need to qualify the word change. Okay? And let me read it again. Because it's very important. Very important. I want to take you through it. Some lessons about it. Leadership must be socially critical, which means when we say socially critical, we must look at what is not working right around us. The fact that, they are homeless, it's not working right, and people are not well looked after. It looks like there lacks a transport for people who are disabled, and we're looking at things like that. Or kids at school who don't have parents, or don't have, you can be a teacher and say, I'm just going to be relevant to kids who don't have money for, money to bring, to buy food at school. Whatever socially relevant idea you have. Any kind of socially relevant idea you have. So leadership is and must be socially critical. It does not reside in an individual, but in the relationship between individuals, which means you begin to enter into a relationship with individuals. And it is orientated towards social change, social vision and change, not simply only organizational goals, which means we don't, the person I got this definition from, he was writing about the fact that most of leadership was spoken about was was spoken about within the context of organizational goals, how organizations need to meet their goals with their bottom lines. And in another sense, it can be extended to a social environment. I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to organizational goals. But let me talk about this. Let's say I'm taking these kids then. I'm taking the street kids. I'm putting them into new homes. But I'm not changing their drugs habit. They're going to sell everything. So change must include changing the people to be ready for the things they want. So which one is easy? Just to build a house or to change their drugs? What is it? Raise your hand. Let me see those that are saying it's easy to take a street kid who's in drugs. It's easy to take them into a new house than it is to make them stop the drug. Who say it's easy to give them a new house? Raise your hand. Who says it's easy to change their drug habit? Raise your hand. You see, there's no hand. Now we know. Now this very point guides your efforts. Remember, we talk about social change now. You want to change the situation somewhere with friends and everybody. You can't change their jealousy. You can't change who they are. The greatest problem with the social change is that you're not sharing goals with these people. Now you find out that making them stop their drinking, stop their drugs is the most difficult problem. No wonder why they left home, because they did not leave home with unloving parents. Their parents were the most loving people you can find, but the parents found out the limitations of their love, that even their love could not change their drug habit. It needs God. Okay. Now what do we do then? Then we begin to talk. Then let's philosophize. Let's philosophize. Let me bring it into a philosophical thinking. Let's philosophize. Really. There is no such a thing as a change that excludes God. Now I'm philosophizing. There's no such a thing as a change that excludes God. So then everybody, if you're working in a social space, you're working in education, you're working in helping, maybe you're working for government, you're helping the community, you may never change the violence of the community. All you can do is to give them new homes and new address. You always need God to change them. You're going to always have to provide an additional input into their head that challenges their thinking structure, not just give them a product, not just give them a home. Something needs to influence their level of thinking for them to change. And how does that come? In any situation, there's no such a thing as a change without God. You can't do education without God. So you might as well make up your mind that even if I'm a teacher or I'm managing people at work, maybe some of the input is through getting them, all of them, to read a verse in the morning before you start working. Just read it without preaching. But you need an external input to influence their thinking, not just give them good jobs, not just give them promotion. You find out that changing situations sometimes is better than changing human beings. It's better than changing human beings. Once you begin to deal with change, which means you want to change a situation, you want to change, and you find out now it's difficult to change your brother and your sister who's not living right. It's difficult to change them. You've been trying to now, and you find out, and you bring them to your house, you're happy, you have all of a sudden you and your husband have built a big home, and you bring in your sister and your brother and they spoil it for you. And your husband, your wife says, no, again. That's particular. Because you find out that giving them an opportunity it does not equate to them changing. People will keep who they are even if they come into a mansion. They come into a mansion. On social change. So there are those then that says to us, why am I raising this to some degree? There are those that say to us, no, you're going to find the same thing. It's a social. The same thing. People are problematic. People have got problems. Okay? Now, while I'm on this social run, okay, I want to drop another one. I'm going to talk about human emancipation. Leadership as human emancipation. I want to deal with leadership as human emancipation. Okay? To emancipate is to set free. Is to get people to be free. And I'm going to give it to you and tell you that in our job, part of our preaching is to bring Jesus, but is to liberate your mind to think better, to think bigger, and to think harder and to get ahead. Okay? One writer says, okay, it's very important. It says, we make the claim that leadership is fundamentally addressed to social change and human emancipation. That is basically a display of social critique, and that its ultimate goal is the achievement and refinement of human community. Okay? Let me explain that. Which means the social emancipation, the human emancipation means the achievement and refinement of human community. Okay? Now, what does that word refinement mean? What does refinement mean? You take something that is rough and you refine it, okay? Something that lacks what? Excellence, etiquette, class, top. It says part of leadership is to refine people. Tell your neighbor, tap your neighbor on the shoulder and say, don't sleep, we're going through a refinery. Tell it. Don't sleep, we're going through a refinery. We'll finish in the next 10-15 minutes. We'll finish at 12. I think we should say at 12, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, we're going through a refinery. Okay. Now, in the broader scheme of things, in the production process, when things were produced, whether sugar or gold, okay, it would mean you take it you mine it, but it's mixed with all kinds of mud. It's covered in not so good gold ore. You want the internal well developed that meets the specifications, or you want to shave off the part of the product or what you have mined, and you want to refine it. You want to bring it to a refinery. You want to take something. If you were to take who's a company that you know that sells refined gold articles and silver articles. Maybe say you take, Tina, when you're growing up, there were stands, right? Stands. Namukumulo stands, where people used to buy their marriage rings, right? What else do you have now? Kaplan, different kinds. What you have? Huh? Huh? Browns. American Swiss is kind of. Okay. If you were to take an American Swiss buyer, because in all of these companies there's a department that does the buying of the gold, the buying of the silver. If you can take the buyer and say to him, this is when you've just mined the gold. You've just taken the gold, it's still full of mud, it's still covered with the gold ore that is not up to scratch, up to standard, and say, this is the gold that we're going to sell you. They're going to say, no, that's not what I'm buying. Actually, they're buying that. It's just that they're buying it in a reformed position. We take it through refinery. Now they say, now I can buy this. We have given the same product, but we're giving them in a reformed way. Now, listen to this very carefully. Never forget this. I know you are quality, but you are unrefined. There are people who can't buy you the way you are. They will buy you in a refined form. It takes leadership to refine you. We must refine you. They will enjoy you when you are refined. They will enjoy your presentations, your preaching when you are refined. But now you are still the same quality. You are still gold, but unrefined gold, unclean gold, unrefined gold. You need to be refined. You need to be brought up to scratch. That's what leadership does. We refine humanity. The question is, who's refining you? How refined are you? Now let's look at characteristics of lack of refinery. Number one, rude talking. Other people can't buy you now because you're unrefined. What's the sign of being unrefined? Okay, rude talking, bad manners, lazy attitude. But you quality. Give me more. I need 5 from the crowd. Unrefined characteristics. I need from the crowd. Suggest, raise your hand and speak up. Hygiene, very good. Always late, very good. I take laziness, I take that. Yeah? Yeah? Being bossy, very good. Yeah? What? Dishonesty. Dishonesty. Yeah? Arrogance. Very good. Very good. Very good. You see, you're unrefined. You're gold. You can do it. You're good. But you're unrefined. There's certain areas of your life that you have not decided to dispatch to let go. There's parts of your life you have not decided to retrench. Tell your neighbor, you've got to give some parts of your life a retrenchment package. I didn't say your friends, I didn't say part of the naughty thing. There's parts of your life you need to give a retrenchment package. In the next 2 minutes, 1 minute, I want you to think about a part of your life you want to give a retrenchment package. You want to announce the split between you and that part of your life. Maybe anger. Write it down. 2 minutes. I'm giving you 2 minutes. You're going to write it down. Don't show it to anybody. Write it down. Think about it in your life. There's some parts. You're unrefined. You're good, but you're unrefined. You're a rough diamond. You've got to go through certain things. Leadership will help you. To make sure that you dispatch. We have valelisa lama parts empilo yako angeko savory. Right? Yeah. Very important. Very important. It says, and that its ultimate goal is the achievement and the refinement of human community, which means number 2, you help people achieve. You help them refine, you help them achieve. Achieving, which means laying your hands on the prize. Achieving, which means you get it. You didn't think about it, you didn't just pray about it, you got it. That's an achievement. Achievement is in the line of, you achieved your goal. It's a fulfilled dream. What we've just read, let us know that achieving is not automatic. People need to be taught how to achieve. And therefore, here's the bottom line. There are people who spend a lifetime in achieving nothing. Yeah, they spend a lifetime in achieving nothing. I don't want to mention areas. It can be tough if I mention areas. People spend a lifetime in never achieving anything financial. The people who spend a lifetime and never achieve anything relationally, in their relationships. It's difficult to achieve. It takes grace to achieve. People need to be taught and shown how to achieve. It's part of leadership for us to show you how to achieve. Okay? So an achievers class, or as leadership, sometimes that is why in different companies where they are driven by sales. In companies where they're driven by sales, they're selling things, and network marketing, if you've ever know things like that, network marketing, and they're driven by sales, they usually have an achievers bracket. And in the achievers bracket, they build the best rewards around that bracket of achievers. They build a trip to Ella Disol. They build a trip for free to Disney World. They build a trip for free to different parts of the world, and you can go to Monaco in France and go to Monaco and see the best of the world and see the best of boats and everything. They fly all over the world. If you come to the achievers bracket, they push you to achieve, and the dangling carrot are the benefits of those achievers class. And you start meaning something to the company. So that we call an instrumental drive to achievement. They're going to treat you as a thing to give them things for you to give you things. As leadership, we don't teach you as a thing to give us things for you to give you things. You don't give me money for me to give you a position. That's transactional. That's instrumental. Leadership is a relationship that helps you get there. Nurture you to get there. builds you to get there. It's not instrumental. We call it like that in leadership. We are not, when we call it, we talk about it, you are not being objectified. You're not treated as an object. Anytime when you're treated as an object, it defeats the purpose of a Jesus type of leadership. You're treated as an object, objectified. Okay? It's human emancipation. Okay. Now, there's leadership that is the reduction of suffering. The next slide type of leadership is leadership which is a reducing suffering. Reduction of suffering. Okay? I'm going to give it to you. What is leadership? A reduction of suffering. A reduction of suffering. Smith says leadership becomes a form of enablement. That word enablement is the same word as empowerment. A form of enablement through which people can change their lives so that having arrived at a new self-understanding, they may reduce their suffering by creating another way of life that is more fulfilling. I love that. I'm going to do that slowly. I love it. Leadership becomes a form of enablement, which means empowerment. Enablement, through which people can change their lives so that having arrived at a new self-understanding, uzazi kangcono. Maso uzazi kangcono, we can work with you kangcono. Abantu abangazazi labo kunzima ukusebenza ngabo. Who don't understand themselves who they are. Their anger levels, what they can do, what they can't do, their strengths and their weaknesses. They don't have new self-understanding. Having arrived at a new self-understanding, they may reduce their suffering by creating another way of life that is more fulfilling. What does it mean to reduce your suffering? Leadership is against suffering. When you're a leader, you don't let people stay in suffering for too long. Whether they're suffering, whether in life, financially, we reduce suffering. You enable people, you empower. Now let's talk about this empowerment and this enablement and this reduction of suffering. Now, of course, the story is being told and is being told all the time that if you want to help someone permanently, and if you want to, and they compare it with helping someone temporarily. If you want to help someone for a short period of time, you give them a fish. If you want them to go on living when you're not there, you're gone, you help them permanently. You teach them how to catch a fish. It is very painful to tell you that if I can say no to your fish today, looks like I'm hungry more, and stay for 2 days hungry, you teaching me how to fish for 2 days. On the third day, I will have 20 fishes than the one fish you gave me today, and I come back knocking on your door tomorrow, begging again. So there's a little suffering I go through to cancel permanent suffering. But if I'm afraid to suffer the 2 days, just to be hungry, I've been hungry before in my life. I don't have money, I don't have a job, I don't have a place to stay. I've been hungry before. So why not just get hungry for another 2 days, learning how to fish? So there is no, even if you ask me for fish today, and tomorrow I come and you say I've given you a fish, I will still suffer more. There's no other way. There's still suffering. But I would rather suffer the 2 days you teaching me how to fish, and I get 20 fishes the next day and suffering is cancelled for good, than for me not to suffer today. So I'm too hungry and think through my stomach and ask for the fish from you today, and tomorrow sacrifice getting a fish and you say I've been giving you fish tomorrow. Too much. So leadership is empowering to reduce suffering. Write it down. All empowerment that reduces suffering requires your disciplined participation. Nothing for free, nothing for mahala. Like I've made an example. I may have to stay for 2 days without eating, suffer 2 days while I'm learning, for me to be free for good. You can't get everything at one time. For you to cancel suffering for life, you must suffer the 2 days. The 2 days might be 2 years, might be 5 years, might be getting a degree, might be learning a skill, might be starting to work, might not having all the food you want, living on pap and stash water for 2 years, but you've got to suffer to cancel eventual complete suffering. But we empower you at that time. Now, can I ask another question? I hope it's not a bad question in this crowd, particularly while we are online. So, if you're going to live your life asking from me the fish and not want to learn how to fish yourself, I'm going to care about how you use the fish that I give you if you're depending on me for fish. If I found out that I gave you fish, you cut half of it and you sold it just to buy your beer, I may never give you fish again. So when you are depending, you're selling your life because you are controlled. I'm mixing emancipation and reducing of suffering. We need to be set free so that you can decide and God can give you yours. You can give to God as much as you want. And not to say, I took the fish, half of it I gave it to church. You say, why do you give to church? Why do you give to church? When you make your 20 fishes, you can take your 10% to church, the 2 fishes to church. Nobody's going to ask you because now you are free. When we set you free, when you are liberated, you become the best kingdom financer there is. Because you're emancipated. You're emancipated. When I come to the time of exercise, I'm going to close the online, and because the online is not going to benefit when I break into groups for 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to close the online in the next 10-15 minutes, in the next 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to move on. Okay. Now, let's deal with leadership, how it instills values. Pro-values leadership. P-R-O, values leadership. Are you learning something from this? I hope you are. I hope you are. Pro-values leadership. Pro-values. We're finishing in 10 minutes. 5-10 minutes. Leaders can be defined as those, listen to this, who articulate, it means explain correctly and clearly in the simplest terms. Those who articulate particular values within an organization, who negotiate those values into the organizational illusion that shapes, sustains, and justifies behavior. Which means we take values, and what do we do with those values? We negotiate those values, which means we make a way. We talk. It says no. It says no. Don't put it on our diaries. At least put it on the walls. It says okay. As long as they are, I put them on the doors. I put them on the walls. I put them in the windows of the church. It's okay. If you don't want them in your diary, I want to put them on your phones. You negotiate these values, which means you don't back down, because values is the glue that holds the leadership relationship together. Is the glue that keeps the family together, that keeps you together. Is the values. So leadership is those particular, I define as those particular values within organizations who negotiate those values into the organizational illusion that shapes, which means you're being shaped, you are sustained, and you are justified as a leader, which means that justify the behavior. What does it mean justifies the behavior? Senza lente sienzayo, because our values were to ati. Like when you walk into a church, our value is that we greet one another before we start church. When you come into a church and you become destructive and you cross your hand across a person and you shake another, what justifies it is because it's our value to greet one another. We shape you, which means you need something that shapes you. So leadership is not about getting and things transactionally getting. It's also about being made, being shaped, being grown, being developed. being developed. I want to see if I can find my closing quote. My closing quote. One writer, when he talks about different kinds of leadership, it's in the space law. I'm going to bring in different kinds of leadership. There's authentic leadership, there's responsible leadership, there's transformational leadership, all kinds of. I did not get into that because that's beyond our scope here. I teach that when I do leadership. Okay. It says something that caught my attention that I want to close with. This is what they said. They said responsible leadership can be defined as the art and skill involved. Listen to this. I want to close with this because I want you to be good at it. I want you to be a prayer item. Then we're going to break down into groups based on what I'm going to say. Responsible leadership can be defined as the art and skill involved in the construction. Listen to this. Words carefully chosen. Construction. Uyaka from scratch, which means you provide utaga or provide ikandaganda. You provide everything. You provide the ingredients, the water, the ballast, the stone, the cement, everything, the construction. Culture and maintenance of trusting relationships. You have to build trusting relationships with different stakeholders, both inside and outside your purview, your space. And make sure you are acting in a responsible way. You're acting responsibly, you build relationships, lasting relationships. Now, thank you very much for listening to us online, and I hope you have learned a lot, and we're going to go to the exercise part. We teach on leadership quite a lot. I've only done 10% of the work I need to do, but for sake of time, thank you very much for listening to us. We love you online. We shall see you soon. Okay.